Dogfight has one very specific task that it's trying to achieve, and it's to bring back the arcade shoot 'em up in a way that is accessible to as many people as possible, and is really easy to pick up and play, with lots of customisable options with difficulty and so on for those that want it later on. And Dogfight totally succeeds in this. It's really rare to be able to pick up a game and just say, everything made sense, everything felt fast, fluid and easy to understand and pick up, and I was immediately in the heart of the action, just enjoying myself. But that's exactly what my experience was in the first 5 minutes of playing Dogfight. The planes were quick and nimble, they made sense, there was no lag, there was no screen tearing. The colours were really obvious to me about what bullets were mine and what were the opponents. It was really obvious that I could power up my plane, and I could see how powered up my plane was with the meter that was above me. I had a variety of lives that I could choose from. The different options that I had for a main attack and then a secondary attack actually had quite some complexity to it if I wanted to, but if I wanted to stay with just bullets and bombs, I could. Each plane that you pick from feels and plays exactly the same, except for its specialist attack. But again, that's very much down to your own personal preference as to who and what you picked. Everything just felt fluid. And that's really difficult to transcribe onto a video review. But when something just clicks instantly, you have to talk about it and say, do you know what, this is a game that is built for an easy to pick up, understand, accessible crowd, but delivers all the thrills and spills of an arcade shoot 'em up. The game itself is split into 9 different levels. Each level has its own boss. Bosses then reappear later on as sub-bosses in future levels as you go along, so it's worthwhile picking up and understanding exactly how things tick as you go. And the beauty in this is that not only is your main weapon upgradable, but as you play through the game and hit certain scores and perform certain feats, you unlock additional weapons and secondary attacks as you go. And what I didn't realise initially, but worked out later on, is that you aren't just tied to having one bullet and one bomb attack. You could have 2 bomb attacks. You can have 2 bullet attacks if you want. One can be press and held so that it auto fires. The other one can be triggered off with actual button presses as you go and has a bit of a cooldown and recharge rate. But it's entirely up to you how you want to build your planes out. So if you're playing in multiplayer, you could have someone focused entirely on bombing versus someone that's entirely looking at the top half of the screen with lots of bullet attacks, for example. It's really up to you. The way how the different waves of enemies come along is interesting as well, because if you clear an entire wave of a collection of the same enemy, it leaves behind a medal which then gives you a score boost. What's really interesting if you're playing in multiplayer is that you could kill the enemies and someone else nicks the medal and steals your points. So there's a lot about being purposefully quite aggressive and upfront and hands-on with your tactics. It doesn't pay to be reflective or reactive in Dogfight. You need to be on the ball and on the ball quick. Bosses are generally a real treat to play because not only do they come from in front of you or above or below, they also come from behind as well, and so you do have a button where you can switch the axis of which way your plane is facing so that you can attack from different angles. But again, that's played into the different types of bullets layouts or weapons that you have, because you can have ones that spread shot, you can have seekers, you can have ones that fire out in all 4 directions, which I found quite useful for some of the later levels. It just, again, is thinking about how do you want to make the game easier or harder for yourself, and what level of difficulty do you really want from Dogfight. Each level is also scored in terms of stars. If you kill absolutely everything, which is super hard to do actually, because sometimes enemies only stay on for a couple of seconds max before they scoot off, you'll get those 5 stars, and then that will kind of unlock a bonus kind of bit at the end for an ultimate final boss. But you can just simply go around shooting things and progress through the story, getting lower scores as you go. So long as you survive to the end and kill the boss, you'll be okay. The other thing that I found quite interesting with this as well is that the difficulty isn't necessarily just tied to the bullets and the aggressiveness of the enemies and how many lives you've got and how many enemies are on the screen. There is also a speed option. And this is designed mainly around speed running, but you can go from 1 times speed of the game up to 1.6 times speed of the game, and it does not make a difference because suddenly you're flying around, you're having to almost be like deft, like race against the sun type of controls where you're kind of twitch diving in between different bullets and weapons and enemies as they fly in and out. But you're then going up against like a scoreboard of speedrunning too. So it pays for you to then try and kill as many enemies as quick as possible, particularly on those bosses, because if you want to get that leaderboard rank, you're going to be off and away trying to clear that from the speedrunning perspective too. I had an absolute blast playing Dogfight, thoroughly enjoyed it. I have no negatives at all. It just left me with a ginormous grin on my face throughout the entire playthrough. I love the graphical style, I love the fluidity and responsiveness of the controls, the music was funny, there's plenty of sausage puns, which you can kind of roll your eyes and ignore if you want, but I was there for it. I mean, Frankfurter, great name for a sausage bomber, and there's plenty of more of those where they come from. It just delivers on everything that I wanted this game to do, and that's quite rare these days for a game to just do it all out of the box without any bugs or issues or problems. Nails it. Dogfight, if you're uninterested at all in arcade shoot 'em ups, this needs to be on your wish list and as part of your collection. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.